I kissed my sister's ex-husband in my apartment at midnight, and honestly, I'd do it again. Now before you start typing homewrecker and terrible sister in the comments, let me explain something. When a man shows up at your door in the pouring rain, soaking wet, holding overpriced organic blueberries, and choosing you over his entire corporate board, you kiss him. You just do. But here's where it gets messy. 3 months before that night, I didn't even know his name. I just knew him as the weird hot guy in Whole Foods who was having a breakdown over fruit prices at 11 p.m. Honestly, I had no idea he was a CEO, nor did I know he was my sister's mysterious ex that she refused to talk about. And definitely no idea I was about to fall completely, stupidly, messily in love with him. This is the story of how I went from hating my sister's taste in men to understanding it way too well. And yeah, it's complicated as hell.
Hey, beautiful people. If you're new here, welcome to our channel where we bring you the most addictive love stories that'll have you screaming at your screen. We're on a mission to hit 2K subscribers, so if you love drama, romance, and stories that don't insult your intelligence, smash that subscribe button right now. Trust me, you'll want notifications on for this one. Now let's get into it.
My name is Stephanie Brooks, and I've made exactly 3 good decisions in my 26 years of life. Moving to Seattle was not one of them. I was supposed to be in grad school. I was supposed to be building a career in journalism. Instead, I was working at a boutique marketing firm that paid me in experience and exposure, which, shockingly, my landlord refused to accept as rent. It was a Thursday night, or technically Friday morning, and I was in Whole Foods because apparently I hated both myself and my bank account. I'd just gotten off a 12-hour shift fixing a campaign that my boss's nephew had completely destroyed, and all I wanted was some comfort food that wouldn't make me feel like garbage the next day. That's when I saw him. Tall. Stupidly handsome. Sharp jawline that could cut the overpriced cheese I was holding. He was standing in the produce section, staring at blueberries like they'd personally offended him, dressed in a full 3-piece suit at almost midnight like that was normal behavior. I wouldn't have paid attention except he was blocking the strawberries. "Excuse me," I said, trying to reach around him. He didn't move. Just kept glaring at those blueberries. "Hello? Earth to berry man?" He blinked and turned to me, and I swear to God, it felt like the air conditioning kicked up 10 notches. His eyes were dark, intense, and currently looking at me like I'd interrupted something important. "Are these actually worth $12? He asked, his voice smooth with just a hint of an accent. I stared at him. "Are you seriously asking me to justify Whole Foods pricing at midnight? You shop here. Presumably, you have opinions." "My opinion is that capitalism is a scam and we're both victims, but I still want my strawberries, so if you could just." "The organic ones are twice the price of conventional," he continued, completely ignoring my attempt to end this conversation. "The nutritional difference is negligible according to most studies. It's essentially a marketing tactic preying on consumer anxiety about pesticides." I blinked. "Did you just mansplain blueberries to me in a Whole Foods at midnight?" Something flickered in his expression. Amusement, maybe. "I'm simply thinking out loud." "Well, think quieter and to the left. Some of us have strawberries to grab and bad decisions to regret." He moved slightly, and I grabbed my strawberries. When I looked back, he was still watching me with this unreadable expression. "You're very direct," he said. "You're very in the way." This time he definitely smiled. Barely. Just a twitch at the corner of his mouth that somehow made him even more annoying and attractive in equal measure. "I'm Jiho," he said, extending a hand like we were at a networking event and not in a grocery store after midnight. I looked at his hand, then at him, then at my cart full of shame purchases. "Cool. I'm tired. Nice meeting you, blueberry philosopher." I walked away before he could respond, feeling his eyes on my back the whole time. Rich weirdos, I thought. Seattle was full of them. I had no idea I'd just met my sister's ex-husband. 3 days later, I was sitting in my sister Kimberly's pristine townhouse in Capitol Hill, wondering why I'd agreed to have a family dinner. Oh, right. Because she'd guilt-tripped me about never spending time together anymore and being so distant since the divorce. The divorce that happened 8 months ago and that she still refused to talk about in detail. Kimberly was my older sister by 4 years, and we were close in that complicated way where you love someone, but also want to shake them every other conversation. She was a corporate lawyer, successful, gorgeous, and had her life together in a way that made my messy existence look like a tornado hit a thrift store. "So I've been seeing someone," Kimberly announced as she brought out salmon that looked like it belonged in a magazine. My mom perked up immediately. Mom had flown in from Denver for the week, ostensibly to visit her girls, but actually to judge our life choices in person. "Oh? Tell us everything," Mom said, in that tone that meant she was already planning a wedding. "His name is Derek. He's a consultant. Very stable. Very normal." Kimberly shot me a look. No drama. I nearly choked on my wine. "Is that shade? Are you throwing shade at your own dating history right now?" "I'm just saying I learned my lesson. No more complicated men with complicated lives." "Kim, your ex was an accountant. How complicated could he have been?" The temperature in the room dropped about 15 degrees. "He was not an accountant, Stephanie. I told you he worked in business." Same energy. Boring job, boring guy, boring marriage that went nowhere. Mom made a noise. "Stephanie, that's unkind." "It's true though. You never even told me why you divorced him. One day you're married, the next you're single and refusing to discuss it. Was he cheating? Secretly broke? Had a weird foot thing?" Kimberly's jaw tightened. "Can we not do this tonight? We're never doing this. You've shut down every conversation about it for 8 months. Because it's none of your business. You're my sister. Your business is kind of my business." "Girls," Mom interrupted, using her mom voice that still worked even though we were both grown. "Let's just have a nice dinner. Kimberly, tell us more about Derek." The rest of dinner was tense and boring in equal measure. Derek sounded like human oatmeal, nutritious, practical, and completely flavorless. As Kimberly described their weekend trip to some winery, I mentally checked out and started thinking about the article pitch I needed to finish. That's when Kimberly said something that snapped me back. "He was actually at that restaurant opening last week. You know, the Korean fusion place downtown? Apparently, he used to go there." "Who, Derek?" I asked. "No. Jito. My ex." I froze with my fork halfway to my mouth. "I'm sorry, what's his name?" "Jito." "Why?" My brain short-circuited. "Korean guy? Tall? Looks like he's permanently judging everyone." Kimberly frowned. "How do you know what he looks like?" You showed me pictures. Right? At some point." I was scrambling now, trying to remember if she actually had. In truth, Kimberly had been weirdly private about her marriage. I'd met her husband exactly twice, once at the wedding, which I'd missed most of because of food poisoning, and once at a family Christmas where I'd been so hungover I'd barely formed memories. "Maybe," Kimberly said slowly, still frowning. "Why are you asking?" "No reason. Just trying to picture the guy who fumbled my amazing sister." That seemed to satisfy her, but my heart was racing. It couldn't be the same guy. Seattle had plenty of Korean men named Jiho. It was probably a common name. The chances of me running into my sister's ex-husband in a Whole Foods at midnight and arguing about blueberries were astronomically low. Right? Wrong. So incredibly wrong. I saw him again 2 days later at my favorite coffee shop in Fremont. I was working on my laptop, trying to salvage a client presentation, when someone sat down across from me. "The strawberries were a better choice than the blueberries would have been," a familiar voice said. I looked up and felt my stomach drop. Blueberry guy. Jito. Possibly my sister's ex-husband Jiho, unless the universe wasn't that cruel. He was holding an Americano and wearing another obscenely expensive suit, looking completely out of place in this hipster coffee shop with its mismatched furniture and local art. "Are you following me?" I asked, closing my laptop slightly. "You're in my usual coffee shop. If anything, you're in my territory. This has been my spot for 2 years. I've been coming here for 4. We stared at each other. His expression was neutral, but there was something in his eyes, amusement, challenge, I couldn't tell. "You never told me your name," he said. "In the store." Every instinct screamed at me to lie. "Stephanie." "That's beautiful." "Setswana." I blinked. "You know Setswana?" "I know it's a Southern African language." "The specific origin? I'd be guessing. South Africa. My dad was from Botswana. Mom's Black American. I'm just a regular American who can't speak the language and disappoints the elders at family reunions. I don't know why I was telling him this. What are you, name police? Just curious. He took a sip of his coffee. You're a writer? Marketing. The dreams died in undergrad. That sounds bleak. That's because it is. What about you? Let me guess. Tech bro? Startup founder? Bitcoin enthusiast? I run a company, yes. Shocker. Let me guess. You're disrupting some industry and making the world a better place through algorithms. That almost smile again. Something like that. God, you're every Seattle cliché packed into one suit. You're sitting in a coffee shop in Fremont working on a laptop. You're not exactly breaking stereotypes yourself. I hated that he had a point. Touché. Still doesn't explain why you're sitting at my table. All the other tables are taken. I glanced around. He was right, unfortunately. The place was packed. Fine. But I'm working, so no more blueberry philosophy or whatever weird small-talky tech people do. Understood. He pulled out his own laptop, and we sat in silence. It should have been awkward, but it wasn't. It was comfortable, which was weird. I didn't get comfortable with strangers, especially not ones who looked like they owned stock in companies I couldn't afford to shop at. 20 minutes passed. I was deep in editing a social media calendar when he spoke again. This is terrible. I looked up. Excuse me. He turned his laptop toward me slightly. On the screen was a presentation with the most corporate, soulless stock photos I'd ever seen. This presentation. It's for a product launch. Does this make you want to buy anything? I studied it. Is your target audience other robots? Because maybe. For humans? Absolutely not. That's what I thought. Who made this? Our marketing team. Fire them. He actually laughed. Small, but real. I can't fire my entire marketing department. Then tell them to stop using images that look like they came from businesspeopledoingbusinessthings.com. I pointed to one particularly egregious photo of diverse professionals high-fiving. Nobody has ever high-fived like that in an office. That's not how humans behave. What would you suggest? And, just like that, I was pulled into a 40-minute conversation about marketing, authenticity, and why corporate America had forgotten how to talk to actual people. He was surprisingly easy to talk to, sharp, asked good questions, and didn't interrupt. When I checked the time, I'd completely missed my deadline for the afternoon. Shit, I muttered, looking at my phone. I have to go. I kept you. I participated willingly. That's on me. I started packing my laptop. Good luck with your robot presentation. Stephanie. I paused, half standing. Would you want to consult on this? Freelance. I'd pay your rate. I should have said no. Every red flag was waving. I didn't even know his last name. But I also had student loans and a rent payment coming up. What's the company? I asked. KMH Tech. I froze. KMH Tech. As in the KMH Tech that had been in the news for acquiring like 3 different startups in the last year. As in the multi-million-dollar company. You work for KMH? I'm the CEO. Of course he was. Of course the blueberry philosophy guy who showed up at midnight in Whole Foods was a CEO. Of course the universe was this ridiculous. I need to think about it, I managed. Of course. Here. He handed me a business card. Heavy stock, minimalist design. Kong Jiho, CEO, KMH Tech. Kong Jiho. My sister's ex-husband's name was Jiho Kang. I was so screwed.
Okay, pause. Before we get into the absolute chaos that's about to unfold, can we just talk about how Stephanie has gotten herself into the immeasiest situation? If you're loving this story so far, please hit that like button and drop a comment telling me if you'd take that consulting job or run for the hills. Now back to the story.
I did what any rational person would do. I cyberstalked the hell out of Kong Jiho. Sitting in my tiny apartment that night, I went full FBI mode. LinkedIn, company profiles, news articles, everything. And with each click, my stomach sank deeper. Kong Jiho wasn't just a CEO. He was the CEO. The guy had founded KMH Tech at 25 and had turned it into a powerhouse in cloud infrastructure and AI solutions. He'd been featured in Forbes, TechCrunch, and Bloomberg. He'd given a TED Talk about innovation that had 8 million views. And he'd been married to my sister for 3 years. I found their wedding announcement in some society pages from 4 years ago. There were photos. Kimberly looked stunning in a sleek modern wedding dress, and Jiho looked exactly like he did now, just slightly younger. They looked happy. Perfect, even. What the hell had happened? I called my best friend Shanice immediately. "I'm having a crisis," I announced when she picked up. "Is this a I ate an entire pizza and regret it crisis, or a my life is imploding crisis? Option B, but make it weird and complicated. Hold on, let me get wine." I heard shuffling, a cork popping, and then she was back. "Okay, go." I explained everything: the grocery store, the coffee shop, the job offer, the realization. Shanice was quiet for exactly 3 seconds. "Girl. I know. Girl. I know. You're crushing on your sister's ex-husband." "I am not crushing. You spent 40 minutes talking to him about marketing and didn't realize the time. You memorized his coffee order." "I didn't." "It's an Americano, right? Damn it. That's just observation skills." "Stephanie. Babe. Love of my life. You're in denial thicker than Atlanta traffic." I groaned and fell back on my couch. What do I do? "Well, first, you tell your sister." "Absolutely not." "Stephanie. She won't even tell me why they divorced. Every time I bring him up, she shuts down. How am I supposed to say, hey, remember that ex-husband you refused to discuss? Yeah, I ran into him, and he's hot, and offered me a job, and I might have accidentally flirted with him." "Did you flirt?" No. Maybe. I don't know." I pressed my hands to my face. "He was arguing about blueberries, Shanice." "What kind of person does that?" "A weird one, apparently." "Which is your type." She wasn't wrong. My dating history was a graveyard of emotionally unavailable men with interesting neuroses. "I should turn down the job," I said. "How much is he offering?" I looked at the email he'd sent. My eyes had bugged out when I saw the number. "Enough to pay off 2 of my credit cards." "Then you take the job, keep it professional, and absolutely do not catch feelings." "Right. Professional. I can do professional." Well, it turns out that she could not, in fact, do professional. I agreed to one meeting. Just to hear him out. That's what I told myself as I walked into the sleek downtown offices of KMH Tech 3 days later. The lobby looked like something out of Architectural Digest. The receptionist, a woman with perfect skin and a Bluetooth earpiece, smiled at me. "Stephanie Brooks? Mr. Kang is expecting you. 32nd floor." The elevator ride felt like ascending into another tax bracket. When the doors opened, I was greeted by floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of Elliott Bay that made me forget how to breathe for a second. "Ms. Brooks." I turned. Jiho was walking toward me, and I had the completely inappropriate thought that it should be illegal to look that good in a navy suit. He'd lost the tie since this morning, and his sleeves were rolled up just enough to show his forearms. I was staring at forearms. I needed help. "Mr. Kong," I said, forcing professionalism into my voice. "Jiho, please. We've already argued about produce. I think we're past formalities." Was that humor? From Blueberry Robot Man? He led me to a conference room that was all glass walls and ergonomic chairs. Spread across the table were marketing materials, product specs, and what looked like 6 different iterations of the presentation I'd roasted. "I took your advice," he said, gesturing to the materials. "Fired the whole marketing team." I stopped mid-step. "You what?" "I'm kidding. But I did tell them their work looked soulless." They weren't thrilled. I bet. So I'm bringing an outside perspective. I'm one person. With a laptop and trust issues. You're also the first person in 2 years to tell me the truth instead of what they think I want to hear. He pulled out a chair for me. That's worth something. I sat, trying to ignore the fact that he smelled really good. Like cedar and something else I couldn't place. "Focus, Stephanie." For the next hour, we went through everything. The product was actually cool, a cloud-based platform that helped small businesses manage their operations without needing a tech degree. The problem was the marketing made it sound like rocket science. "You're selling to people who are overwhelmed," I explained, pulling up examples on my laptop. "Your messaging is adding to that overwhelm. Look at this. Synergistic cloud solutions leveraging AI-driven analytics." What does that even mean? It means I know what it means. But does a bakery owner in Spokane who just wants to track inventory know? Or care? He leaned back, studying me. You're good at this. I'm okay at this. I'd be better if I actually got to do it instead of fixing other people's mistakes for minimum wage. Then work with me. As a consultant. For now. There was something in the way he said it that made my skin prickle. Not in a bad way. In a dangerous way. I need to be honest with you about something, I said, before I could stop myself. He waited. My sister is Kimberly Brooks. I watched his face carefully. There, just a flicker of something. Surprise? Recognition? It was gone too fast to tell. I see, he said quietly. She's the one who mentioned you the other day. That's how I put it together. I didn't know who you were in the grocery store, I swear. I just thought you were some weird rich guy with opinions about fruit. Despite everything, he smiled at that. I am some weird rich guy with opinions about fruit. Yeah, but you're also my sister's ex-husband, which makes this whole thing complicated, he finished. Exactly. We sat in silence for a moment. The city sprawled out below us, indifferent to our small human drama. Does she know you're here? He asked. No. And I don't think I should tell her. She doesn't like talking about you. The divorce. Something crossed his face. Pain, maybe. I'm aware. What happened? If you don't mind me asking. I mind, he said, but not unkindly. It's not my story to tell anymore. Fair enough. So, what do we do? I asked. You decide if you want the job. I decide if I can be professional enough to work with my ex-wife's sister. And we both pretend that there isn't something else happening here. My heart stopped. What? He met my eyes directly. You're intelligent, Stephanie. Don't insult both of us by pretending you don't feel it too. I should have gotten up. Should have left. Should have done literally anything except what I did, which was sit there and hold his gaze. I take the job, I finally said. We keep this professional. Whatever we ignore it. Agreed. I'm serious. So am I. We shook hands. His grip was firm, warm. He held on for just a second longer than necessary. I was so screwed. Keeping things professional lasted approximately 5 days. Not because anything happened, but because working with Jiho was like getting a masterclass in controlled intensity. The man was brilliant, focused, and had opinions about everything from font choices to the Oxford comma. We fell into a rhythm. I'd come to the KMH offices 3 times a week, and we'd work through campaigns, messaging, brand voice. His marketing team, who very much still had their jobs, was surprisingly cool about an outsider coming in. Especially after I helped them pivot a campaign that increased engagement by 40% in 2 weeks. But it was the small moments that killed me. Like when he brought me coffee without asking, and it was made exactly how I liked it. Or when we were working late and he ordered Thai food, somehow knowing I was vegetarian without me mentioning it. Or when he really laughed, at a joke I made about corporate synergy, and it transformed his entire face. You're staring, Shanice said during our bi-weekly video call. I was at my apartment, supposedly working, but actually looking at a photo from a company meeting where Jiho was presenting. Professional interest only. Obviously. I'm not staring. I'm observing. Girl, you're doing heart eyes at your laptop. Have you told Kimberly yet? Told her what? That I'm doing consulting work? She knows I freelance. That you're consulting for her ex-husband who you're clearly catching feelings for. I'm not, I stopped. Okay, hypothetically, if I was catching feelings, which I'm not, what would be the harm? They're divorced. They've been divorced. She's seeing Oatmeal Derek. The harm is that it's messy as hell and you know it. What happens when she finds out? She won't. Famous last words. I need you to come to an event with me. I looked up from my laptop. Jiho had just walked into the conference room where I was working, and he looked uncomfortable. Which was new. What kind of event? A tech industry gala. It's for charity, but really it's networking theater. I need a buffer. A buffer. Someone to rescue me from boring conversations and vendor pitches. You're a CEO. Can't you just leave? Not without seeming rude. But if I'm mid-conversation with a consultant about an urgent project, you want me to be your fake urgent project? I want you to be my real colleague who happens to also save me from talking about golf for 3 hours. I should have said no. This was definitely crossing the professional line we'd drawn. When is it? Saturday night. I'll send a car. I can drive myself. It's formal. Downtown. Parking is nightmare. How formal are we talking? Black tie. I mentally went through my closet. I had exactly one dress that might work, and it was from a wedding 2 years ago. Fine. But you're buying me fancy appetizers as payment. Deal. Saturday arrived too fast. I spent way too long getting ready, telling myself it was just because it was a fancy event, not because of who I was going with. The dress I settled on was a deep sapphire blue, fitted, elegant, with a slit that felt daring but not inappropriate. When the car arrived, I felt ridiculous. When I arrived at the Four Seasons and saw the actual red carpet and photographers, I felt like I'd made a terrible mistake. Then I saw Jiho. He was standing near the entrance in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, talking to someone I vaguely recognized from tech news. When he saw me, he stopped mid-sentence. I watched him excuse himself and walk over, and I swear the entire world went slow motion and stupid. You look. He started, then stopped. I clean up okay, I said, trying for casual and landing somewhere near breathless. You look phenomenal. Oh. Oh no. You look decent too. For a CEO. That smile. Shall we? He offered his arm. I took it, and we walked in together. The gala was exactly as he described, beautiful, boring, and full of people trying to seem important. But with Jiho, it was almost fun. He introduced me as his marketing consultant, and I got to watch people's faces try to figure out our relationship. We ate fancy appetizers. We judged people's outfits quietly. We snuck out to the balcony when the speeches got too long. Thank you for this, he said, looking out at the city lights. For what? I've just been eating free food and making commentary. For making this bearable. He turned to me. I usually hate these events. Why come then? Obligation. Networking. The usual corporate reasons. He paused. It's different with you here. The air between us shifted. We were standing close. When had we gotten this close? Jiho. I know. Professional. We agreed. We did. Neither of us moved away. This is a bad idea, I whispered. Terrible idea, he agreed. He was leaning in. I was leaning in. The entire world had narrowed to the space between us and Jiho? We sprang apart like teenagers caught by parents. Standing in the balcony doorway was a woman in a silver dress, looking between us with poorly concealed interest. Christine, Jiho said, his voice back to professional smooth. I didn't know you were attending. Last-minute decision. I see you brought a date. Colleague, I corrected quickly. I'm consulting on a project. Her smile said she didn't believe that for a second. How nice. I'll let you two get back to consulting. She left. We stood in painful silence. We should go back inside, I said. Stephanie. Please. Let's just go back inside. We did. We stayed for another hour, but the ease was gone. When he dropped me off at my apartment, we barely said goodnight. I went inside and immediately called Shanice. I almost kissed him. What? We almost kissed and someone saw and it's a mess and I'm an idiot. Okay, slow down. Start from the beginning. I told her everything. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Stephanie, you need to tell Kimberly. I can't. You have to. Before this gets worse. It won't get worse. I'll just keep my distance. Professional. Like we agreed. Babe, you're lying to yourself. Maybe, but I wasn't ready to face the truth yet. I managed to avoid being alone with Jiho for exactly 6 days. We communicated via email. I worked from home. I was doing great at avoidance. Then Kimberly called. Family brunch tomorrow. Mom's leaving Tuesday and wants to see us together. Can't. I have work. On Sunday. Big project. Stephanie, you're coming. 10 a.m. Don't make me guilt trip you. So Sunday morning found me back at Kimberly's townhouse, eating overpriced pastries and trying to seem normal. You seem distracted, Mom said, studying me with that mom X-ray vision. Just tired. Work's been intense. She's been taking on freelance projects, Kimberly added. barely see her anymore. It's good money, I said defensively. What kind of projects? Mom asked. Marketing consulting. For a tech company. Oh? Which one? And this is where I should have lied. Should have made up something. Should have literally said anything else. KMH Tech. I felt Kimberly's eyes snap to me. What? It's just consulting work. No big deal. KMH Tech. As in Jiho's company. Mom looked confused. Who's Jiho? My ex-husband, Kimberly said slowly, her voice dangerously calm. Stephanie, can I talk to you in the kitchen? We excused ourselves. The moment we were alone, she rounded on me. You're working for Jiho? I'm working with his company. It's professional. How long? A few weeks. A few weeks? And you didn't think to mention this. You don't talk about him. Every time I bring up the divorce, you shut down. How was I supposed to know if it was okay? You could have asked Stephanie. Would you have said yes? She paused. No. Exactly. So, what was I supposed to do? Turn down good money because you have unresolved issues with your ex. They're not unresolved. Then what are they? Because from where I'm standing, you won't talk about him, won't say what happened, but also don't want anyone else interacting with him. You can't have it both ways, Kim. She pressed her hands to her face. You don't understand. So explain it to me. I can't. We stood there, both breathing hard. From the dining room, I could hear Mom's chair scrape. She was definitely eavesdropping. Why can't you? I asked, quieter now. Kimberly's eyes were shiny. Because it hurts too much, okay? Because I spent 3 years with someone who was brilliant and kind and made me laugh, and then one day I realized he was never going to love me the way I loved him. He tried. God, he tried so hard. But you can't force that kind of thing. My heart cracked. Kim. He was honest about it. Told me he cared about me but couldn't give me what I deserved. And the worst part? He was right. I knew it. I felt it. We were perfect on paper and empty in reality. She wiped her eyes. So I ended it. And everyone thinks he's the bad guy, and I let them, because it's easier than admitting that sometimes love just isn't enough. I didn't know what to say. Is there something happening between you two? She asked quietly. No, I said, and technically it was true. We're just working together. But you want there to be. I couldn't lie to her. Not about this. I don't know. Maybe. But I would never do that to you. She laughed wetly. You're such a terrible liar. I'm not lying. Stephanie, I've known you your whole life. You get this look when you like someone. All defensive and flustered. You have it now. I'll quit the project. I'll stop working with him. Don't. She took a breath. Don't do that. What? I'm not going to be the person who stands in your way. That's not fair to anyone. She met my eyes. But I need you to be sure. Because Jiho, he's a good man. But he's complicated. And if you're going to pursue this, you need to go in with your eyes open. I'm not pursuing anything. But if you were? I thought about blueberries and coffee shops and balconies and almost kisses. Then I'd want to know what I'm getting into, I admitted. Kimberly nodded slowly. He's brilliant. Driven. Generous in ways people don't see. He remembers everything, birthdays, favorite foods, offhand comments from months ago. He'll make you feel like the most important person in the room. But he's also married to his work in a way I could never compete with. And he carries guilt like it's his job. About his parents, about the company, about never being enough even though he's already everything. She smiled sadly. I thought I could love him through it. I was wrong. We stood in the kitchen, sisters separated by 4 years and one very complicated man. I'm sorry, I said, for not telling you. I'm sorry for shutting you out. Mom appeared in the doorway. Are we done fighting? Because these pastries aren't going to eat themselves. Despite everything, we laughed. I didn't go back to KMH offices. Instead, I asked Jiho to meet me at a coffee shop in Ballard, neutral territory. He arrived exactly on time, because of course he did. We ordered drinks and sat at a corner table, the awkwardness palpable. I talked to Kimberly, I said. His expression didn't change, but his fingers tightened slightly on his cup. How much does she know? That I'm working with you. That there might be something else. And She gave her blessing. Sort of. While also warning me that you're complicated and emotionally unavailable. He winced. She's not wrong. You want to elaborate on that? For a long moment, he just looked at his coffee. When he spoke, his voice was quiet. My parents built their business from nothing. Came to the US with barely anything and created something successful. My father had a heart attack when I was 23. Died at his desk working on a contract. He paused. My mother told me to make it mean something. So I did. Built KMH, made it bigger, better, more successful than they ever dreamed. That's not a bad thing, I said gently. It is when you sacrifice everything else for it. When you marry someone wonderful and realize 3 years in that you've given them meetings and distraction instead of presence. When you work 18-hour days because stopping means thinking about whether you're actually happy or just busy. Jiho. Kimberly deserved better. She deserved someone who came home at reasonable hours and didn't check emails during dinner and actually showed up emotionally. I couldn't be that person. I'm still not sure I can be. Did she ask you to be? He looked up surprised. Did Kimberly ever ask you to work less? To change? No, but then maybe the problem wasn't the working. Maybe it was that you two wanted different things and were too busy being perfect on paper to admit it. He stared at me. That's remarkably close to what she said when she asked for the divorce. She's smart. You both are. You just weren't right for each other. I leaned forward. But here's my question. Are you telling me this to warn me off? Or to give me context? I don't know, he admitted. Both, maybe. I'm drawn to you, Stephanie. Have been since you called me out about blueberries like my opinion was the most ridiculous thing you'd ever heard. But I'm also terrified of repeating the same mistakes. So don't repeat them. It's not that simple. It really is. You're not married to Kimberly anymore. You're not obligated to be the person you were in that relationship. Maybe you were wrong for each other. That doesn't mean you're wrong for everyone. And you think you might be right for me? My heart was thundering. I think we won't know unless we try. And I think hiding behind past failures is just another way of being too busy to show up. He laughed, sharp and surprised. You're terrifying, you know that? I've been told. We sat there, the coffee shop noise fading into background static. If we do this, he said slowly, I want to do it right. No hiding, no games. Honest, even when it's uncomfortable. Agreed. And slow. I don't want to rush and mess this up. Slow I can do. Okay. We smiled at each other like idiots. So now what? I asked. Now we finish our coffee. And then maybe let me take you to dinner. A real one, not a work meeting disguised as a meal. That sounds suspiciously like a date. It is absolutely a date. Then yes. The next 3 months were a study in contrasts. Professionally, we were killing it. The campaign we'd built increased KMH's client acquisition by 30%. I got hired on as a full consultant with benefits and a salary that made me cry actual tears of relief. Personally, we were taking it slow in a way that felt both frustrating and right. First date, dinner at a small Italian place where we argued about whether pineapple belongs on pizza. It does, and I will die on this hill. Second date, a bookstore where he bought me 3 books I'd mentioned wanting, and I bought him a cookbook he'd never use because he lived on takeout. Third date, cooking at his apartment where I discovered that lived on takeout was an understatement. The man's fridge contained wine, leftover Korean food from his mom, and regret. This is pathetic, I said, staring at the empty shelves. I'm aware. We're going grocery shopping. Now. It's 9 p.m. And? So we went to Whole Foods, the same one where we'd met, and I made him buy actual ingredients. He complained the entire time while pushing the cart and asking questions about every vegetable. Is this cilantro or parsley? Cilantro. They look identical. They taste completely different. Have you never cooked before? My parents cooked. Then I had a wife who cooked. Then I had money for delivery. Tragic backstory. You're still learning to make stir-fry. Back at his place, I taught him basic cooking while he proved to be endearingly hopeless. He burned the garlic. Twice. How did you survive this long? I asked, rescuing the pan. Determination and money. But he was trying, and watching him focus on dicing vegetables with the same intensity he brought to board meetings was adorable. We ate the slightly burned stir-fry on his couch, and it was perfect. "I told my mother about you," he said suddenly. I nearly choked on my rice. "You what?" "She called last week. Asked if I was seeing anyone." I told her yes. "What did she say?" "She wants to meet you." "Oh God." "She's not scary. She's lovely. She built a business from scratch and raised a CEO. She's terrifying." He laughed. "Fair. But she'll love you." "How do you know?" "Because he stopped, and I watched him catch himself." "Because you what?" "Because you're easy to love," he said quietly. We sat with that statement hanging in the air. We hadn't said the actual words yet. We were taking it slow, being careful. But it was there. Growing. Undeniable. Mrs. Kang was, indeed, terrifying. She was elegant, sharp-eyed, and greeted me at her Bellevue home with a smile that felt like a test. "So you're the one my son can't stop talking about," she said, ushering me inside. "Mom," Jiho protested. "What?" "It's true. Stephanie said this. Stephanie thinks that. I was beginning to think you'd invented her." I liked her immediately. Dinner was traditional Korean food that she'd spent all day preparing. It was delicious and overwhelming in the way family meals always are. "My son says you work in marketing," Mrs. Kong said. "Yes. Actually, I'm consulting for KMH. So you're the one who fixed their terrible branding." Jiho looked at his mother. "Have you been checking up on the company?" "I'm a shareholder. Of course I check." She turned back to me. "Kimberly never understood the business. Sweet girl, but no interest. You're different." The mention of Kimberly made the table go quiet. "She's my sister," I said, deciding honesty was the only policy here. Mrs. Kang's eyebrows rose. "I see. That must be complicated." It was. We talked about it. "She's okay with this. And you? Are you okay with following in your sister's footsteps?" It wasn't said meanly, but it landed hard. "I'm not following anything," I said carefully. "Jiho and I are building something new. What he had with Kimberly is separate from what we have." She studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "Good answer." The rest of dinner was easier. Mrs. Kang told embarrassing stories about Jiho's childhood. He pretended to be annoyed, but was clearly pleased. I felt the warmth of being included in something intimate and familial. As we were leaving, Mrs. Kang pulled me aside. "He's happier," she said quietly. "I see it. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." "I'm just being myself." "Exactly. Everything was good. Better than good." "Great." Then the article happened. I was at my apartment when Shanice called, her voice tight. "Have you seen Tech Insider today?" "No, why?" "Check your email." Now. I opened my laptop. There in my inbox was a link from Shanice with the subject line, "Oh no." The article was titled, "KMH Tech CEO Dating Ex-Wife's Sister, Silicon Valley's Latest Scandal." My stomach dropped. It was all their photos of us at the gala, at restaurants, grocery shopping. Quotes from unnamed sources about how inappropriate it was. Speculation about how long we'd been seeing each other. Questions about whether we'd started before the divorce was finalized. We hadn't, but the article implied otherwise. And worst of all, a quote from Kimberly, "I have no comment on my ex-husband's personal life." Which, in the court of public opinion, sounded damning. I called Jiho immediately. "I saw it," he said before I could speak. "What do we do?" "Ignore it. It'll blow over." "Jiho, they're implying we had an affair." "We didn't. People who matter know that." "Your investors? Your board? Do they know that?" Silence. "This is going to be a problem, isn't it?" I said. "It might be. I have a meeting tomorrow with the board. They'll want to discuss optics." "Optics." "Right. Because that's what I am. An optics problem." "Stephanie, that's not what I meant." "I should go." "Wait." I hung up, then immediately felt bad about it, but also angry and scared. Shanice came over with wine and ice cream. "Talk to me," she said. "I'm ruining his life." "You're not." "I am. I'm a scandal. Bad press. The ex-wife's sister who's causing problems." I laughed bitterly. Kimberly warned me he was complicated. She didn't warn me I'd be the complication. "Have you talked to her?" "Not yet. I'm scared too. Babe, you have to. I called Kimberly the next morning. She answered on the first ring. Are you okay? She asked immediately. You saw the article. Half my firm saw the article. I've gotten 17 texts asking if it's true. Kim, I'm so sorry. Why are you apologizing? You didn't write it. But it's dragging you into. Stephanie, stop. I'm not mad. I'm worried about you. She paused. That quote they used? The reporter called me at 6 a.m. I was barely awake. What I actually said was I have no comment on my ex-husband's personal life because it's none of my business and I wish him happiness. They cut off the second half. Relief flooded through me. Really? Really? I'm calling them to demand a correction, but you know how online media is. The damage is kind of done. I don't know what to do. Do you love him? The question caught me off guard. I think so. Maybe? Yes. Then you fight for it. Screw the optics and the gossip and all of it. If he makes you happy and you make him happy, that's what matters. When did you get so wise? Around the time I realized that letting my ex-husband's mother guilt me into staying in an unfulfilling marriage was stupid. She laughed. Oh, speaking of which, she called me yesterday. Mrs. Kong? What did she say? That you have good taste in wine and she likes you better than me. Which, honestly, fair. I burst out laughing despite everything. Jiho called me that evening. His voice sounded tired. How was the meeting? I asked. Could have been worse. Could have been better. What does that mean? It means they're concerned about optics. Want me to lay low for a while, avoid public appearances with you until things calm down. My chest tightened. And you said? I said I'd consider their input. Consider their input. That's very diplomatic. Stephanie, are you breaking up with me? What? No. God, no. I'm just trying to navigate this without making things worse. Worse for who? The company? Your reputation? Or us? All of it. That's not an answer, Jiho. He sighed. I don't know what you want me to say. I want you to say that you're not going to let some board members dictate your personal life. I want you to say that what we have matters more than optics. My voice cracked. I want you to choose me. I am choosing you. By hiding? By laying low? That's not choosing, that's compromising. What do you want me to do? Tell the board to shove it? Risk the company my parents built because of a tabloid article. I want you to fight for us the way I'm fighting for us. We were both breathing hard, the conversation having escalated faster than either of us intended. I need some time, he said quietly, to figure this out. How much time? I don't know. And there it was. The same pattern Kimberly had warned me about. The work coming first. The emotional unavailability dressed up as responsibility. Okay, I said. Take your time. I hung up before he could respond. A week passed. Then 2. Jiho and I texted occasionally, brief, polite updates about work. I was still consulting for KMH, but we communicated through email. Professional. Distant. I threw myself into other projects. Picked up 2 new clients. Redid my entire portfolio. Went on a truly terrible Hinge date that reminded me why I hated dating apps. Shanice staged an intervention on week 3. You look like sad toast, she announced, barging into my apartment with Thai food. Thanks. That's exactly the look I was going for. Have you talked to him? He needs time, remember? It's been 3 weeks, Stephanie. That's not time, that's avoidance. Maybe he realized Kimberly was right. Maybe he can't do this. Or maybe he's scared and being stupid about it. She handed me pad thai. You're both being stupid, actually. 2 smart people being dumb about feelings. It's exhausting to watch. What am I supposed to do? Show up at his office and demand he choose me? That's not how this works. Why not? You demanded he improve his marketing. You demanded he learn to cook. When did you become passive about what you want? She had a point. I didn't show up at his office. That felt too rom-com, and despite what Shanice said, I had some pride left. Instead, I sent him an email. Subject, we need to talk. For real this time. Jiho. 3 weeks is long enough. I get that you're scared. I get that the board is breathing down your neck and the optics are bad and you're trying to protect the company your parents built. I get all of it. But here's what I need you to get. I'm not Kimberly. I'm not going to quietly accept being put on hold while you figure your shit out. I'm not going to be understanding and patient while you decide if I'm worth the complication. Because here's the thing, I already decided you were worth it. The mess, the scandal, the ex-wife connection, all of it. I decided that what we have is worth fighting for. So here's my ultimatum, and I know you hate those, but too bad, you have 48 hours to decide if you're in this with me or not. Not halfway in. Not, let's wait until things calm down in. All in. If you can't do that, I understand. I'll finish my current projects with KMH, and we'll go our separate ways. Professional, clean, no hard feelings. But if you can? If you want this as much as I do? Then stop hiding behind board meetings and optics and show up. Your move. I hit send before I could overthink it. Then I waited. 48 hours felt like 48 years. Day 1, nothing. Day 2, morning, still nothing. Day 2, afternoon, I started accepting that he wasn't going to respond. Started mentally preparing myself to move on. Day 2, 11:47 p.m., someone knocked on my door. I opened it to find Jiho standing in my hallway, soaking wet from the rain, holding a bag of groceries. Blueberries, he said, slightly breathless. The organic ones. Wildly overpriced. Nutritionally identical to conventional. Completely worth it if you want them. I stared at him. What? I'm choosing you. The board can deal with it. The optics can deal with it. I'm choosing you, and I'm all in, and I'm sorry it took me 3 weeks to get my head out of my... I kissed him. He dropped the groceries. The blueberries survived, thankfully, and pulled me closer, and it was everything the almost kiss at the gala had promised to be. Desperate and tender, and 3 weeks of wanting compressed into a single moment. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. You're soaking wet, I said. It's raining. I can see that. Why didn't you call first? Because you gave me 48 hours and I used 47 of them being an idiot. I didn't want to waste the last one. I pulled him inside and we stood in my tiny apartment, dripping on the floor. I talked to the board, he said. Told them my personal life is my personal life, and if they had a problem with who I'm dating, they could take it up with HR. Which, since I'm technically the head of HR, meant they could take it up with themselves. You didn't. I absolutely did. Mrs. Park looked like she swallowed a lemon. It was amazing. I laughed, and it felt like releasing 3 weeks of held breath. I also called a press contact, he continued. Gave them an interview about how the previous article was garbage and invasive, and how you're the best thing that's happened to me in years. It'll run tomorrow. Jiho. And I called Kimberly to apologize for dragging her into this mess. She told me to stop being dramatic and that you two had already talked. Then she told me if I hurt you, she'd sue me. I think she was joking, but I'm not entirely sure. She's protective. She should be. You're extraordinary. Okay. You need to stop saying romantic things while you're dripping on my floor. It's very distracting. Should I leave? Absolutely not. But you should change into dry clothes. Which you don't have here. So I guess you're stuck wearing my bathrobe. I'll manage.